All right, well, hello. I'm so happy you could join today for the next lesson in SEDA College Online's intermediate language lessons. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy and healthy. And I think we have a good lesson planned for today. We are going to continue our work with conjunctions. So we've talked a lot about conjunctions. We've talked about what they are and how to use them. We talked about how we use them to make different sentence types, compound sentences, complex sentences, compound complex sentences. And if I remember, in the previous lessons, we were talking about those conjunctions for the non-specific things. That's right, like whoever, however, whenever, those sorts of things. When you don't have a specific idea. Well, now we're going to move to the next category of conjunctions to talk about, and those are time conjunctions. So there are many, many, many time conjunctions. Um, I'm just going to talk about a few of the important ones and a few of the ones that I think are a little more difficult, a little more tricky. So what we're going to talk about today are after, until, as soon as, when, and once. So these are five time conjunctions that are very common, and there's a bit of nuance, I'll say, with them. So we're going to talk a lot about how to use each of them, how they are different, and how to use them accurately. All right. Well, before we begin, though, there's an idea we need to talk about and clear up, and those are prepositions. So some of these conjunctions are also prepositions. So first we need to check what is a preposition. Well, prepositions are just words used to show the relationship between two nouns. So if, in any sentence, you often have two things you want to talk about, and you want to talk about how those two things are connected. What's their relationship? And so prepositions are how English does this. In English, they always come before the noun that they are talking about. And prepositions can only have a noun phrase after them. That's the rule about them, is it's a preposition and a noun, always. And importantly, some prepositions can also be used as conjunctions. And so that's why we're talking about this here, is to kind of show you what's the difference and how can you tell. So an example of just normal common prepositions. You know these words: in, to, at, around, from, of, for. And then here are some ones that are both conjunctions and prepositions: after, before, and until. Um, so we can see we're going to talk about two of those today, after and until. So that's why we're going through this. So how can you kind of identify the difference? So let's look at some prepositions. I put the luggage in the car. So in this sentence, I want to talk about these two nouns. I put something somewhere, the luggage, the car. Well, in English, I can't just put I put the luggage, the car. I can't just put noun, noun like that together. I need some word to show relationship, specifically location. Where did I put it? So I use the preposition in. I put the luggage in the car. So in is a preposition we use to show location between two nouns. Or my mother's at the park with the dog. And so now, again, we have another preposition for location, a different type of location. I'm sure many of you have questions. What's the difference between in and at? And we can save that for a different lesson. It would be a lot. Um, but you can see now we have more nouns. So I want in this sentence to show the relationship between three: my mother, the park, the dog. And so I use the prepositions at and with to show those relationships. At the park, so my mother's location, and what is with her, what else does she have? So she has the dog, so I use the preposition with to show together. Another one, the letter from my grandmother is very special. Well, prepositions aren't always location, they're not always direction. They can also show relationships like the source of something. So, where does one thing come from? So, in this case, the letter is from my grandmother. My grandmother is the source. She created the letter. Or they can show possession. He is a friend of my sister. So here I'm using friend and I want to connect it to sister, so I use of to show possession. So you can see in all of these examples, this is really all prepositions do. They just connect two nouns together and tell you what's their relationship. Is their relationship location? Is it something about instruments or to coming together? Is it about sources or is it about possession? And there are many more. I'm sure you are very aware English has many, many, many prepositions. Um, and this is because we have very specific ideas. We want to really understand the specific relationship between those two nouns. So how do you identify? Is it a conjunction or a preposition? What do you do? Well, basically you have to look at the structure of the sentence. So, for example, here, before the party, I want to eat dinner. This one's a preposition. Why? Well, because we have the phrase here before the party, and there's only a noun. That's it. There's just a noun in this phrase, so I know it's a preposition. Or we can look at something like this. Before we go to the party, I want to eat dinner. So now we've got a conjunction because we have a noun and a verb. So we've got a sentence, a subject and a verb. So now I know it's a conjunction because conjunctions connect sentences together. Well, not always, but this one connects sentences or clauses. And then the one above is just a noun. So I know it's a preposition. Really, there's no difference in these two sentences. They're exactly the same meaning. Before the party, I want to eat dinner. Before we go to the party, I want to eat dinner. You could argue that this sentence is more specific. You know, it's more information. I know we are going to go to the party in this sentence, and this one I don't. In this sentence, I could be leaving the party. It's at my house, and I say, well, before we have the party, I I want to eat dinner, so I'm having it here. I don't go anywhere. So that's one difference. There might be more information from a clause than you get from a preposition, but really, the word we care about before has the same meaning in both cases. It can accept a clause and it can accept just a noun. All right, but that's the only difference between the two. And when we come to after and until in this lesson, you'll see why we talked about this. So let's start with the conjunctions. So the first conjunction to talk about is when. And when has two meanings. The first one is just at that time or during that time. So it is only a conjunction. When only connects clauses together, and the first thing it means is that this clause happened at the same time as another clause. It can also have an idea of a sudden occurrence. And I'll show an example of that to make it a little more clear. So when you use when, it's just going to connect clauses. So it's going to be when, the clause, and then the rest of the sentence, the next sentence. And always remember that if when is first, you need a comma after the clause. It's just, a standard rule for making a complex sentence. So let's look at the meanings. When I was at the grocery store, I saw a coworker. So this is the first meaning here, at that time or during that time. So I was at the grocery store, I saw my coworker, they happened together. Or it can have this idea of a sudden occurrence, something happened that is unexpected. When I was cooking dinner, or I was cooking dinner when my phone rang. Um, and then I see, oh, there's that sudden occurrence. I was in the process of cooking dinner, and then, oh, I was interrupted when my phone rang. So know that it has two meanings. Usually, if it has the idea of a sudden occurrence, we're using a continuous tense, and then we'll use a simple tense like the simple present, simple past when it's happening at the same time. So that's a small difference there, but um, I think these examples are pretty clear that you can use it both ways. Okay, the next is as soon as. So this is a conjunction and a phrase. Really, the conjunction here is as. So the word as here allows you to connect sentences together, similar to because. So what does this phrase mean? Well, we use it to mean immediately after something happened. So it's always very urgent. That's the most important thing with as soon as. If you use this expression and this conjunction, you mean immediately. I mean the moment, the second after something happens. And so the form is the same as before. It's as soon as a clause and then the rest of your sentence. And of course, if the as soon as clause is first, make sure you put a comma. So what does it look like? Sorry. There's also the common abbreviation ASAP. So if anyone's ever seen this abbreviation, it means as soon as possible. Uh, Taking this conjunction here and making it an abbreviation. I just included that because it's connected to the phrase. So what does it look like? I'll clean the dishes as soon as I get home. So here we have the first action. I will clean the dishes. When? As soon as I get home. So this one is showing that, the moment I get home, I will start cleaning the dishes. Or as soon as they arrive, or as soon as they arrived, they started unpacking their luggage. So the moment they arrived at my house, they started, putting away their clothes and their things. So this is meaning literally from the one moment to the next. No gap, no break. And then here's how we use the expression normally. We normally attach it to the end of the sentence, just kind of attach it there. So we'll send you the package ASAP. That's usually how we would say it. And we just attach it at the end, meaning as soon as possible, as quickly as we can. All right, the next conjunction to talk about is once. So once is very similar to when and as soon as, and I'll talk about specifically how they're different in a moment. But this one just means at the same time as another action. So like I said, it's similar to as soon as, but there's a slight difference in feeling. And it's also very similar to when. And it's used the same way. Once your clause, your sentence, and if that clause is first, make sure you put a comma. So, the form for all of these is the same because they're all the same, they're the same type of conjunction. So, some examples. Once you get to the park, call me so we can meet. So, at the same time as another, so, this is the idea that once you arrive at the park, call me. So, once this, do this. There's an idea of finishing here. So there's an idea that you do this one first and then the next. So, once you arrive at the park, finish, then you call me. And then there's another example. The phone rang once I walked into the office. So, the moment I walked into the office, the phone rang and my workday began. So you can see how both of these are just showing that these events should happen together, really. Once is an idea that these two things need to happen together. So specifically, how is it different? How are the three of those different? When, as soon as, and once? Well, as soon as is urgent. This one has that special meaning of very urgent. It needs to happen immediately. So only use this one when things are really important or time is very important. Otherwise, you can use once because once is less urgent. It just means, one thing happens after another. So in any situation, these two can be changed and they'll have the same grammar and the same meaning. First this, then this. But be careful that as soon as has a feeling of very urgent. This is very important. Whereas once just means this one first, then that one. There can be a gap, there can be a break, some time, it's okay. Now, when we compare it to when and once are also very similar, except once usually means the action is finished and then you do it, whereas when usually means they're in progress together. So some examples. As soon as you get home, call me. I worry when you travel at night. So this one, maybe your mother says this, and she's very worried you're traveling late at night. So the moment you get home, it is important that you call her. So that's why we use as soon as in this example. Whereas this one, once is more natural. Once she walked into the office, the phone rang. Here, time is less important. Once she walked into the office could be, the 1 minute, 2 minute, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Maybe she took her coat off, she hung her coat, she sat at her desk, she turned on her computer, and then a phone call. Um, so that's, once is less urgent, it allows more time. And of course, I can switch these. I can say, once you get home, call me. And then it's just less urgent. Then it's, maybe get home, take your shoes off, put your bag down, make a cup of tea, then call me. That's fine. And then I can say, as soon as she walked into the office, the phone rang. And then this one means the moment you open the door, ring, ring, the phone is happening. So it's just that difference in time and urgency. So then let's look at when and once together. Let's compare for this one. When I was cooking dinner, the doorbell rang. So this just means they're happening together. Cooking is happening and the doorbell rings ding dong at the same time. Um, neither is finished, both are happening together. Where if I say once I cooked dinner, the doorbell rang. And now this one is meaning once I do this, this is finished, then I will do this. So once I cooked dinner, dinner is done, dinner is finished, then the doorbell rang. So that's a small difference between the two. And really, it shows in the verb as well. It's more natural to use the past continuous here, was cooking, because they're happening together, where it's more natural to use the simple past here because it's finished. So just know this is kind of the natural way to do it. If you mix them up, it's okay. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Um, but just know that these words do have these small, these very small meaning differences and these very small differences in feeling. So it's important to try to remember that so that you can be accurate about the organization of time. All right. So now let's look at the other two, after and until. So after is both a conjunction and a preposition, and it has different meanings depending. So as a conjunction and a preposition, it can just mean following an event. So, one after another, just step one, step two. And this is the same if you use it as a conjunction or as a preposition. But as a preposition only, it can also be about position, like location, and it means behind. So, something behind you is after you. So form, it depends on if it's a conjunction or a preposition. If it's a conjunction, it has the same form as all the others, after clause, comma, sentence. If it's a preposition, now it's just a noun phrase. So um, it normally it's not something you can confuse because they're very different and they're used very differently. But this is how you identify what is it doing. You can look at what is behind it to see. This is your conjunction. This is your preposition. So here are some examples. After I cleaned the house, I read a book. So now we've got our conjunction because we have a clause here. I cleaned the house. And this just means following. So, this happened first, and after that, I did this. So this event happened after I did this. Event one, event two. Or it can be used as a preposition with the same meaning. We left the pub after the football match. So now we know event one, the football match, and what did we do after that? We left the pub. So it's just so, showing that sequence of event one, event two. Or it can talk about position. She went into the store after her mother, and here it's talking about physical location. Her mother went first and she went second. So we use after to show that difference. All right. So what about until? Until's a little trickier. The idea is a little different, and sometimes you have to be careful because I do see many mistakes with until. So this one is the opposite of after. So if you think after means event, this event happened after another, so one, two, until is the opposite, meaning that this one happened up to a specific point and then we change. So The form is the same as after, depending on if it's a clause or a preposition, because this one can be both. So if it's a clause, or sorry, if it's a conjunction, you'll have a clause, a full sentence, and another sentence. If it's a preposition, you'll just have a noun phrase. So let's look here at some examples again. We have enough milk to last until tomorrow. So here, this is just a preposition, until tomorrow, because we have the noun tomorrow, and that's it. So it's just a preposition. But it has this idea that we have enough milk for all the time from now to tomorrow. And then once tomorrow happens, we change. We run out of milk. We don't have enough. Um, or, please don't cut the cake until I get to the party. So now we have a clause because we have a full clause here. I get to the party with another sentence. Please don't cut the cake. It's connected with until. Well, and so once again, it's talking about this action. Please don't do this action. Please don't cut the cake until this other event happens. So, and then we change. We cut the cake. So, wait to this time, I arrive, and then we can do it. Or it can just be more about time. I studied at university until 2012. And so now it's talking about that. I did all of this study up to 2012, and then I stopped and I changed. So that's really the important way to think about until, is that it has that idea that this thing happens to this point and then we change, and then after that is when we get what we want, or we get what we change, or what we're talking about. So I've made some kind of pictures here, maybe to help them to help you see. I hope it helps you see. So let's look at after. This is the first idea. After the party, we went home. So here we have action one and then action two. So after the party, we went home. So we went home here, action two, and then the party as action one. And so I use after to say this happened, then this happened. And so this is how after is used. It's used to show that event two, or event one happened after event two. So after the party, we went home. Whereas until is the opposite. So we stayed at the party until 11 p.m. So we stayed at the party, and then we stayed all the way until action 2, 11 p.m. And then we changed, then we go home. So action 2 is the difference. We stayed all the way to 11, and then something else happened. So that's how these are opposite. They're showing this different relationship in time. After is always step 1, step 2, this happened after this one, whereas until is the other way around. This happened to this point, and then we change again. So I just wanted to show you this picture in case anyone had some confusion, some doubts. I hope this helps. I hope that helps show and clear things up. The last thing we need to talk about is future time clauses. So we talked a bit about this a long time ago, so I thought it's good to mention it again. So all of these conjunctions can talk about different times, the past or the future or the present. But when the time clause is talking about the future, we have some specific rules. So when the sentence is actually about the future, you need to use the simple present or the present perfect inside the dependent clause, so the thing with the conjunction. And the present perfect has slightly different meaning. It has an emphasis that one will happen before the other. So let's look at this example. Call me when you do your homework tonight. So this sentence is about the future. In the future, when you do your homework, I need you to call me. But this sentence, because we use the present simple, do, after you do your homework or when you do your homework, has the idea that it's happening at the same time. I want you to call me, while you're doing it. If we change to the present perfect, the meaning changes. Call me when you've done your homework tonight. Now I want you to do it after you finish your homework. So in this example, it's now that the homework is finished. You do your homework, then you call me. So this is a small difference between the present perfect and the present simple, especially with a word like when. It's when it because it's not clear, when can mean at the same time or after. So you can use the grammar here to show the difference. However, though, often it doesn't matter at all. So let's look at these. Call me after you get home. Call me after you've gotten home. No difference at all. Because after has a special meaning. Step one, step two. After this, do this. So it doesn't matter. It cannot be at the same time because of the meaning of after. So it doesn't matter. Um, so don't worry too much about this. Most importantly, this is what you need to do. If it's a future sentence, use the present simple or the present perfect. That's the most important thing. This clause here, when you do, after you get home, uh, you need the present perfect or the present simple here because it's a future sentence. That's the most important grammar idea. And, if you want to be a little more advanced, you can try to work with this idea that the present perfect shows one, then the other, where the present simple shows at the same time. Um, but as I said, many times it doesn't even matter, it doesn't make a difference. So this is more of a very small grammar idea. I say focus on this right here. Just make sure you use one of them if the sentence is future. If it's past, this doesn't apply. If it's a past sentence, like, um, he called me when he did his homework last night, then it doesn't matter. This is only for the future sentences where this idea of the present simple is important. All right. Well, that is everything in this lesson. So we talked about these time conjunctions: when, as soon as, once, after, until, and then we talked about how you need to be careful if it is a future sentence. And if it's a future sentence, make sure you're using the present simple or the present perfect. But sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, and that's really up to the conjunction. Something like when it matters, something like after it doesn't. But thank you so much for watching this lesson today. I hope this helps to give you some future time clauses to help organize the next thing you send. And I hope that helped clear up any confusion you may have about after or until. I know sometimes they're a little tricky, so I hope that that little diagram with the arrows and the pictures I helped showed you the difference a little more clearly. And as always, if you're a SEDA college student right now, please go to the Google Classroom and you can find the additional material for this lesson to complete your study for the day. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again. Bye bye.